What's up, curious youngsters? Surely when you don't understand how something works or you don't know why things happen, you just ask questions. From normal questions like why the bottom of ships is red, to more interesting ones like why we turn red when we get sunburned. Well, Mr. Curiosities, some subscribers are always asking questions, and some are so interesting that I'm bringing them up in this video. And with that, and much more, here are 20 curious questions in 10 minutes. Freddie Gomez asks why the bottom of ships is red. Although there's no law requiring it, the vast majority of ships have their bottoms painted red for an old reason. When ships used sails, their hulls were painted with a copper-based paint to prevent algae and crustaceans from sticking and damaging the vessel. And this copper in the paint was responsible for giving it the reddish tone that became a tradition. Although technology now allows any color, red is still used because it contrasts well with seawater, making it easier to see the ship's condition from outside. Did you know that, my friend? Raul Leonardo Lopez asks how porcupines shoot their quills. We know that porcupines have an ingenious defense when they feel threatened, since they have thousands of long, hardened hair strands directly attached to their muscles. This fiber comes off when they come into contact with another animal, and since the tip is hook-shaped, it's difficult and painful to remove them. Therefore, it's a myth that porcupines throw their quills from a distance, since they only come off when they get hooked onto the predator's skin, although they do so violently and can pierce it without any problem. Jorge Torres asks why the core of the planet is hot. The center of the Earth is surrounded by an extremely hot and moving liquid, a liquid that is at very high temperatures due to radioactivity. This phenomenon is caused by traces of elements that were trapped inside the planet during its formation billions of years ago. These elements, such as uranium, thorium, and potassium, are still slowly decaying, and in that process, they release particles that move and collide with the surrounding material, heating it to temperatures similar to those of the sun, around 6,000 degrees Celsius. Orby Mendoza asks why we get welts where insects or other animals bite us. I'm sure you've gotten a welt from an insect bite at some point. Well, this phenomenon is quite common, and most of the time, it only causes some itching. The reason they appear is due to our body's reaction to the insect's saliva, which contains formic acid. This substance is responsible for causing swelling and irritation in the area, as well as the appearance of small fluid-filled bumps, which, aside from the itching, are harmless and disappear after a short time. Diego Ediana asks why we feel tingling when a part of our body falls asleep. That sensation is called temporary paresthesia, and it happens when we put too much pressure on a limb, because in this way, we pinch the nerves that pass through the area, and at the same time, press on the blood vessels that feed those nerves. So, once we relieve the pressure, blood flows back to the limb and the nerves start sending signals all at once to and from the brain in every direction. That's really interesting, human body. Jaime Alfredo Garcia Aguirre asks how cats' retractable claws work. Unlike our nails, a cat's claws are an integral part of their paws and are directly connected to their bones and tissues. And some of these claws are retractable, which means they stay hidden until the cat needs to extend them. This feature allows them to perform certain movements and functions, and then retract and store them in a kind of internal protective covering called a sheath. This keeps the claws protected and prevents them from wearing down, while also helping them move silently so they can hunt stealthily. Hugo Ernesto Cardenas asks why some animals chase the laser. Many animals, including dogs and cats, can't resist running after laser light to try to catch it. And the curious reason for this behavior lies in their hunting instinct, which consists of chasing and catching anything. When the pet sees the small point of light moving everywhere, it immediately catches their attention, and they try to chase it in order to catch it. The problem is that they are chasing something they will never be able to catch, and for that reason, it's not advisable to stimulate them with this all the time. Alberto Saavedra asks, will Mars be habitable in the future? It has been proven that about 4 billion years ago, Mars was a warm and wet planet with characteristics similar to Earth. Therefore, scientists agree that Mars is currently the most suitable planet for colonization, estimating that living there may be possible in about 300 years, since the days on that planet are very similar to those on Earth, as well as its seasons. In addition, Mars has water and a large amount of carbon dioxide that could feed the plants that will be grown there. However, many problems still need to be solved before we can try living on our neighbor in the solar system. Sebastian Templar asks, why do we turn red when we get sunburned? If we spend time outdoors and aren't using sun protection, the skin that was exposed to the sun can become red. And this reaction is explained by the presence of UV rays from the sun that travel to Earth and are responsible for causing burns on the skin. In response to this damage, our body's immune system reacts with redness, pain, swelling, and itching in the affected areas, which lasts until the cells in the outermost layers are replaced. Thank you for taking care of us, human body. Dionys Liberato asks, what role do corals play in the aquatic ecosystem? Despite their rigid appearance and lack of apparent movement, corals are marine animals that live in colonies, forming spectacular reefs. We need to know that these are some of the most biodiverse and complex ecosystems in the world. And to understand their importance, we have to know that a quarter of all marine life depends on these ecosystems, both for food and for finding shelter from predators. And besides serving as a habitat for thousands of species, they also protect coastlines from erosion by reducing the impact of waves. Osvaldo Caballo asks, why does boiling water soften a potato but harden an egg? To understand why boiling water produces different effects depending on the type of food, we need to look at its composition. For example, in the case of an egg, it is mostly made up of a protein called albumin. And when it is boiled, it hardens because the heat causes those proteins to unfold and form solid bonds in a process called denaturation. On the other hand, a potato consists of starch, which has a denser, more compact structure. So what boiling does is destroy that structure and turn it into much shorter molecules of starch and water, which end up being softer and more porous than the raw potato. Ramses 17 asks, why does February only have 28 days and 29 every 4 years? There are two reasons that explain why February is the shortest month and gets an extra day every 4 years. This month was the last one added to the calendar, and the other months already had 30 or 31 days each. So, to fit the length of a year, they assigned it 28 days. And on the other hand, the Earth actually takes 365 days, 5 hours, and 56 minutes to go around the sun. So to balance this with our calendar, every 4 years, the extra hours and minutes are added to the shortest month. Andres Leva asks, what's the greatest free fall a person has survived? Despite being extremely dangerous, some people have managed to survive falls from great heights. But if we're talking about the absolute record, it belongs to a flight attendant from Serbia named Vesna Bulovic. This woman survived a fall from a plane flying at 10,000 meters high in the year 1972. And although it's hard to understand, she only suffered some fractures after the piece of the plane she was trapped in during an explosion in the air fell onto the snow of a mountain, cushioning the fall. Well done, Vesna Bulovic. Ivan Barrientos asks, what are eyebrows for? Surely you've wondered what the function of our eyebrows is, if our eyes are already protected by eyelids and eyelashes. But anyway, eyebrows are there for two good reasons. First, the hair is strategically placed to divert liquids that run down the face to the sides. For example, sweat has salts that can irritate the eyes, and eyebrows help keep them out. And secondly, having eyebrows gives us extra protection against solar radiation and certain debris that the wind can carry, like dust or sand. Sulazulasol asks, do dogs know how to distinguish flavors? While humans have 9,000 taste buds, dogs only have about 2,000. Therefore, this means they perceive fewer flavors than we do and basically rely on their sense of smell to choose and enjoy food. Similarly, their tongue, just like ours, can distinguish sweet, sour, and bitter flavors. But there's something interesting. When it comes to salty flavors, these animals aren't able to notice them because for thousands of years, they fed on meat that already had the necessary amount of salt for their diet. So their taste buds haven't needed to develop the ability to perceive that flavor. Cheeky Piralaula asks, what happens if someone has pareidolia? Many times when we look at an object, it seems like we see something familiar, like finding an animal in a cloud or a face on the front of a car. Well, this psychological phenomenon is called pareidolia, and it's completely normal, since the human brain is prepared to recognize these kinds of shapes. That's why, if something has a certain resemblance to facial features, our mind automatically interprets it as a face, a psychological phenomenon that allows us to see all kinds of faces in any type of object. Jesus David Montero asks, how does a smoke grenade work? Smoke grenades are a special type of weapon shaped like a steel cylinder. A cylinder with several perforations that allow the smoke to escape when it is activated. Inside, this grenade contains about 300 grams of a compound called potassium chlorate, which is responsible for generating the smoke, along with a dye that gives it the corresponding color. So, once we remove the safety pin and the charge is detonated, an exothermic reaction occurs that, in addition to the smoke, releases heat that can be dangerous for our hands. Stay away from grenades, Timmy. Rodrigo from Cozumel asks, how do mechanical alarm clocks work? Mechanical alarm clocks were invented several centuries ago, but they are still a good complement to other digital alarms because they don't need electricity. To understand how they work, we need to know that they have a motor with a small metal spring that winds up every time we turn the key. As it unwinds, the motor releases energy and transmits it to a gear system to which the hands are attached. So that this energy is released little by little, it has an oscillator responsible for the classic ticking sound of these devices. And finally, the alarm hand is connected to a spring, and when the time comes, it activates the hammer that strikes the bells. Garfield asks, how does a flare work? Flares are a type of handheld firework that, in addition to being used at all kinds of events, are also used to signal for help at sea. Their main feature is that they burn slowly and produce very bright flames that can be white or colored. These devices have a wire coated with different chemicals such as potassium, titanium, aluminum, or magnesium, which are responsible for producing the different colors when they combust. And although it's common to see the classic flares that shoot out when activated, we also have flares that light up like a match and can be held in our hands. Luis Gerardo Ochoa asks, when we get hit and a bump appears, what is it filled with? After we get hit, it's common for a bump to appear, which in some countries we call a chichon or chipote. This reaction happens because a small hemorrhage occurs in the affected area. So since the proteins in our blood plasma attract water from the surrounding tissues, a lot of fluid ends up accumulating. And even though it obviously doesn't look attractive, it's a reaction from our body to protect us. And after a few days, it will disappear completely.